Try that again. Good morning. Good morning. Hopefully you all were able to get some breakfast, some juice, some caffeine. I don't think you're going to need the caffeine with all the exciting things we have planned for you. My name is Annette Scoggin, and I'm the director of the 21st Century Program, and just want to welcome you all. It's the first time I've seen a lot of you in person, but I've seen a lot of you on Zooms. But let's give all of us a round of applause to say we are here and we are excited to be in person. A couple of things just to let you know, if the seat next to you is taken, if you will just push the chair up kind of like these right here, that'll help everybody find a seat. The Wi-Fi password is located on the screen. Hopefully it works well for you. The restrooms are out to your right, as is our registration booth if you need anything. If you'll check your cell phones at this time and just make sure they're on silent or vibrate, that'll be very respectful of our exciting speaker we have for you. Now, next, the PPE on the table. We're going to leave that here until the last day, and then we'll decide who gets it. But this right here, unless you have your own hand washing station set up here, is not really something you can use unless you go to the restroom or to your hotel room with it. Just to let you know, it is not a hand sanitizer. It actually is hand wash. Okay? Raise your hand if you've already tried it out. I did it too. It's all right. It's all right. Hey, we've got all of it covered. So first, I want to tell you just a few things about where we are with our team and what we want to do. The number one thing we're here to do is to serve you and find solutions so we can better serve kids and serve the teachers and the people working within the programs. We are not just compliance, even though you probably like every time I talk to you or email, it's something about compliance. We feel the same way. But our goal is to get to the next level to let you know we are here to serve you. We are here to find solutions. If you think, I know Camille's going to present later on an expenditure report, you'd like to get X, but oh, that's probably not allowable or whatever it may be, call and ask. We want to find solutions. We want to look at ways we can make things happen as opposed to just say, nope, that won't work, nope, that won't work. Let's work together to better serve the kids. Now I'd like to introduce you to our exciting team. And scoot up just a little bit. Y'all get in the limelight. As you know, we have our TAs. Do we have everybody up here? Miss Phyllis, wave. Everybody give her a round of applause. Miss Donna. And definitely not last, but not least, not last, Miss Sherry. We also have two volunteers that are onboarding in the future. Miss Pam, they're actually working the registration booth right now, but you're going to get to meet two more people. Once again, our goal is to serve you, and along with Miss Ellen. So hopefully we'll have even more people to serve you. But let's give this team a round of applause. Then moving into our office, actually who runs the office and who does a dynamic job, I'd like to introduce you to Miss Ellis. She's the backbone of the department and does a great job. If you ever receive an email from her, please make sure you read it and pay attention to it. Not that you wouldn't, but if she's sending out an email, it's really, really important. Then we have the famous Camille Anderson. A new team member we have, Miss Jennifer Connell. And then we saved the best for last in this one, and let's give a big round of applause to Yolanda. She has a big bike race this weekend, so wish her luck. And don't offer any chocolate to her. She needs to keep her body well done. And then we have our boss. She is happy to be here with us. She's excited about the picture we put up, as you can tell. But she's dynamic too, and her goal, once again, is the same as ours, is we're here to serve you, we're here to work for you, we're here to do whatever we can for the kids of this state. So at this time, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Killingsworth.
Good morning. It is great to be here at the conference. I don't know about you guys, but it was just about time for me to get away from Montgomery and go somewhere, so I was very glad to come down here. Not exactly fun in the sun, but it'll do. It will do for sure. Our team has worked really hard to prepare this conference to make sure it's what you guys need, what you guys have asked for. They looked at the survey that you guys did and submitted a lot of different suggestions, how you wanted things to look. Some things in the past that looked really good, you wanted to make sure we kept those, and then also add a little new flavor to that. So hopefully you'll be able to see the fruits of their labor. During these few days, if there's anything we can do to help you guys, feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure your stay here is as enjoyable as possible and that you enjoy the conference. So I want to make sure that I say, on behalf of Dr. Eric Mackey, our state superintendent, the past couple years have really been trying for all of us in education. The pandemic has really changed our lives. Just about every aspect has been impacted, especially in education. You know, when schools dismissed in March of 2020, we weren't sure how long we were going to be out for, what it was going to look like when we got back. We didn't know how we were going to serve the students of Alabama. However, we knew the students still needed our help. We knew, particularly our vulnerable populations, the ones that we work with, they needed our support. They still needed our support. And we've heard so many stories from LEAs, different organizations in the community about how you guys have rallied the troops, gotten together, figured out another way to still support the students, although we couldn't all be there together at one time as we're used to. So from Dr. Mackey, State Superintendent of Education, thank you to each and every one of you for what you've done. Please know that we're here to help you. We're here to support you in whatever way we can. And so now I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker for today. Dr. Dickey, we are so happy to have you here today with us. Dr. Dickey is a nationally recognized educator. He is a professional author. He's an expert in the areas of curriculum, instruction, educational administration, and probably a lot others that I'm not aware of. While in the K-12 system, he has produced a track record, a strong track record of school improvement and increasing student achievement. And so he spends a lot of his time going around the country to any and everybody who needs assistance to help them as far as moving their schools, moving their districts, moving their states towards improved achievement. We're so glad to have you here with us. If you attended Mega Conference and you heard him, you already know that you're in for a treat. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Danielle Dickey.
Thank you, Dr. Molly. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. Whenever I get the opportunity to work with folks who are closest to the work of serving children, I call that a good day, all right? And so it's only fair that I warn you about my presentation style. Y'all, I'm going to start out Methodist, but I'm going to end up Pentecostal. Are y'all ready? Y'all ready? Okay, all right. And so I see y'all on the front row. Y'all going to get baptism by fire, all right? Okay, here we go. So what is it that we're trying to do in service to children in our respective roles in the organization? And if I were to poll you, we would probably individually say and collectively say, we're trying to make sure that children have equitable access to instructional experiences that are worthy of consumption, so that whatever is being produced for children to consume, that is fully worthy of consumption. And so north, south, east, west, urban, suburban, rural, that's what I do every day from city to city, state to state, sometimes 3 or 4 cities in one day, trying to make sure that children have unfettered access to instruction of the highest quality. That's my service to humanity, all right? And I take that very seriously. Because while education does not guarantee outcomes, it certainly does provide access to opportunities. And so that's what this presentation is about today. So I asked this question across the country. What is it that children deserve to have access to? What is it that children deserve to have access? And what keeps them from being able to achieve at the highest levels? And all across the country I hear, well, only if parents are more involved. Well, guess what, y'all? Sometimes they're never going to show up. And I was one of those kids for whom no one came. Back to school night, parent-teacher conference. In fact, my mom had adult issues by the time I was 12, and so I had to go live with my grandmother, who was more stable. And I slept on the floor of her living room because her bedrooms were occupied by her grown sons, and I could see the ground underneath the floor in the living room where I slept. But guess what I had? I had access to strong instruction, and now I'm standing in front of you with an undergraduate degree, a graduate degree, and a doctorate from a prestigious university. Our children have capacity. We've just got to make certain in our respective roles that we clear the runway for them. All right, so you've seen this RTI pyramid before, yes? And what does this RTI pyramid say? There's some dangerous assumptions inside of this RTI pyramid. The first one is that all the kids are coming through the door proficient for the most part. That is not true. And people are telling us to follow programs of study with fidelity without understanding the population we're serving. Okay, this RTI pyramid has another dangerous assumption inside of it, that about 10 to 12% of the population is coming through the door in need of some level of support, and everybody's worried about the kids who are on the bubble or that line right between the yellow and the red, so much so that the kids who are highly able and gifted, they're getting ignored. And so what does this red represent? This is the kid you asked to find the key details of find the main idea, the main idea of a paragraph, and they think it's the first sentence of the text. You ask those kids to find the key details, and you give them a highlighter, and they highlight everything. And so when your RTI pyramid is right side up in your district, right, or even for a population within your district, you can take a pull-out approach to improving student outcomes because only 20% of your students are in need of some level of support. But what if your RTI pyramid looks like that? Y'all, I feel Pentecostal. And if your RTI pyramid is upside down, then the vast majority of your population or a particular student group, I don't call them subgroup because that's demeaning. A particular student group or your entire population is in need of some level of support. The yellow represents the kids who are proficient, who could slide into the red if we're not careful, right? And the green at the bottom, that's your highly able and gifted that no one knows what to do with them because they're in the minority, right? And so when your RTI pyramid is inverted, then you cannot take a pull-out approach to improving student outcomes. You've got to take a push-in approach. And what do I mean by push-in? Push in a small number of things that we all agree helps children. And what are those things? I'm going to show them to you today. And wherever I'm working, whether it be north, south, east, or west, folks who put these ideas into practice, that we see significant gains in student outcomes. And I have a white paper published by my partners at Scholastic to prove that to you. All right? Okay, so let's keep going. And I'll make sure you get that white paper. Okay, so let's talk about a few international shifts for teaching and learning. And wherever I see this, whether I'm in Canada or in Korea or in Finland and I'm doing professional development, wherever I see these shifts in place, I see children doing better academically. So in the ELA block, let's talk about the ELA block. In the ELA block, here's what children deserve to have access to, or here's to what children deserve to have access. They deserve to have access to a balance of informational and literary text. And there are folks who are allowing children to call informational text stories, which places them at a significant disadvantage. Because how you approach a piece of literature is not how you approach a piece of informational text as a reader. And the informational text that children should be able to have access to in our ELA block, they should look 6 ways. They should be historical, they should be scientific, they should be technical, they should cross eras, they should cross topics, and they should cross perspectives. What am I saying here? We all know that children from impoverished communities lack background knowledge. How do they get background knowledge if they don't have access to a variety of informational texts? And so it might be in the ELA block that they read a historical text so that when they get to social studies, they already have some background knowledge revolving around that historical figure, historical event, or historical idea. So the first time that they might read about the water cycle could be in the ELA classroom. So they could be reading about the water cycle in the ELA classroom, so when they get to the science classroom, they already have a head start because they didn't start at the same point as their peers who are more economically advantaged. Are y'all with me? So, well, how in the world would I use a historical or scientific or technical text in the ELA block to teach main idea, to teach summarizing, to teach text features, to teach text structures, which are what? The literacy concepts that live inside of the Alabama standards. Okay, let's keep going. The literary text that children deserve, to which children deserve to have access. Y'all see I'm struggling not to end my sentence with a preposition, all right? Okay, the burdens of knowing better. Okay, all right. Now, the literary texts that children should see in our ELA block, they should be written by a variety of authors on a variety of, what? Genres of literature. And what are the three genres of literature? The big three: plays, poems, stories. On the variety of traditions of literature: classical, traditional, mythological. On a variety of eras of literature. Y'all, there are 13 eras of literature. And don't all of our children deserve to have access to literature that's reflective of all of those eras? And on a variety of themes of literature. So how can you, from your position in support to children, ensure that children have equitable access to what you see on the screen? Okay? Now, let's talk about all content areas. It's going to get really exciting now. So, children deserve to have access to complex text. Now, what does that mean? Look, 60% of all children in this country do not read at the grade level expectation in third grade. 60% of all 8th graders do not read at the grade level expectation. 60% of all 12th graders in this country do not read at the grade level expectation. And if those students are minority students, add 15% to that number. And if those students are grappling with a disability, add 30% to that number. So if you have a disability in this country, there's only a 5% chance you can read at the grade level expectation. If you are of minority descent, there's a 75% chance you are not reading at the grade level expectation. Y'all, that's a pandemic if I ever heard of one. So how do we resolve that? Children read at 2 levels. First level, independent. That's how they read with no support from anyone. Children also, well, adults, we do too. We read at an instructional level, which means what? That's how you're supposed to read because of how old you are. Sometimes there's a huge gap between independent and instructional. How do we close it? By giving kids access to what? What do you see on the screen? Complex text. Well, what are you saying, Doc? They don't read at the grade level expectation. You want me to give them access to increasingly complex text as the school year progresses? Yes, but how? How do you close the gap between their independent and instructional reading level? 2 ways. 2 ways. Here they are. Number 1, ask kids to look at the text and tell you if they see a word they can't pronounce. Which is fancy for what, y'all? Decoding. Which means I see letters on the page and I know what sounds to produce. And there are folks who are standing in front of other people's children who are not doing this for them. Y'all, these are other people's children, ma'am. I'm trying to preach. She said, preach. Y'all said, I'm trying. So if we're trying to give kids access to increasingly complex text as the school year progresses, someone has to stop the presses and say, tell me if you see a word in the first paragraph that you cannot pronounce. And let's deal with it right now. And if I deal with it for the 1, I'm dealing with it for the 21 who didn't raise their hands. Okay, here's the second thing we must do to give kids access to complex text so that we close the gap between their instructional and independent reading levels. And y'all know I'm the author of Scholastic Literacy, which is an international program designed to teach kids how to think, how to read, how to write, how to speak at the grade level expectation. It is to say to kids, scan the paragraph. Do you see a word that you don't know what it means? Because here's the formula for reading. Decoding plus creating meaning equals reading. Some kids have an issue with decoding. Some kids have an issue with knowing what words mean after they have decoded them. And God forbid, some children have an issue with both. So let's demystify what it takes to get our children to read. Do you see a word you can't pronounce? Do you see a word that you don't know what it means? And if we, for the 180 days, for the number of years that we have children under our instructional care, if we do that for them, we're going to close that gap. Okay, I'll keep going. There should be one way that we require children to go to the text to support their response to a question, because the psychometricians, the ones who write those assessments to judge educator effectiveness, they have one expectation, one operational definition for what it means to cite textual evidence. And do you know what they use? Page number, paragraph, line number. So when we require children to respond to a text-based question, let me tell you what the educators should require kids to do. Pinpoint the exact location of the information they're using to support their response to the question, page number, paragraph, line number. If they're reading a poem, stanza, line number. If they're reading a play, act, scene, line number. And if we do that, we hold children accountable for supporting their responses to a text-based question. Okay, any millennials in the room? You're 39 or younger. Would you raise your hand for me, please? Y'all look at them. Look at them. Look at them. They're young, y'all. They smell like milk. Look at them. Okay. Okay. All right. Just kidding. Just kidding. You smell great. Okay. So let me say something to you about millennials. Like, sometimes millennials, y'all benefited from technology that us older folks, 40 and over, we didn't benefit from. So when we were little, 40 and over, the teacher would tell us you're going to write a paper. And millennials, we had to start at this place called the library. Millennial, that's a brick building in your neighborhood. Okay. And the teacher would say, I don't want to know what you think on the topic. I want to know what other folks think on the topic. And so you had to go to this machine called a microfiche machine. And they're Googling it right now. What the hell is that? So it looked like an x-ray machine, y'all. You had to turn the dial on it. And when you turn the dial on it, the articles would fly in front of you like this. And if the person who scanned it in had an attitude and scanned it in sideways, you had to lean to see it. And the teacher would say, I want you to get information from multiple sources. I want you to compose from multiple sources. And so you had different color index cards for every one of the sources so you wouldn't get them mixed up. And then you had a rubber band. You put that rubber band around your index cards. And yeah, okay, got it. Y'all remember, millennial, you have no idea what I'm saying. Okay. And then from the index cards, we created our own outline. And the outline had Roman numerals on it. And the teacher told you if you had an A underneath one of those Roman numerals, you had to have a B, all right? So, okay, yeah. And then from that outline, you wrote your first draft. And when you got your first draft back, it had the blood of 1,000 battles on it. Because somebody read it and marked it up with those curious-looking editing symbols. And then you rewrote it, and then you got a final grade for it. And now children have a hard time writing a sentence without a sentence starter. And a lot of that is because we have moved away from requiring even the littles to compose from what? Sources. So how do you compose from sources in your kinder? You read to kids big old books on frogs, multiple books on frogs, and then have them speak to you about frogs. How's that look in upper elementary? You read about the water cycle from more than one text, and then you write or speak about the water cycle. How's that look in high school? You read about the antecedents to the American Revolution from more than one source, and then you write or speak about the American Revolution. Let's go back to that. Okay, last one here. Deep conceptual understanding of academic language. What am I talking to you about? International shifts. Wherever I see these shifts in place, kids do better irrespective of race or socioeconomic status or exceptionality. So what is this? Deep conceptual understanding of academic language means that kids are sitting in our classrooms, we use words they do not understand, and they do not raise their hands and tell us they don't understand. So if kids are going to be analyzing U.S. seminal documents of historical and literary significance with a focus on themes, purposes, and rhetorical features, which is one of your state standards, what the heck does that mean to a child? So someone has to talk to them about what those terms mean before that lesson goes too far. Do you see this in your programming? Are you satisfied with the extent to which your program is reflected in these international shifts for teaching and learning? Okay, let me prove something to you. Let's go a little bit deeper with deep conceptual understanding of academic language. Okay, in your notes or on a piece of scratch paper, I want you to do me a favor. In a moment, answer this question for me first, though. Where do you see these words? Where do children see these words? They're in the standards. They're in their instruction. They're in their assessments. So this is what I call the universal language of literacy. So I'm in the process of publishing a new book with Scholastic. It's called the Universal Language of Literacy. And what is this? These are the terms that cross grade levels and disciplines. And if kids don't know them, they'll test like they were never taught. Now, I'm not about the test, because if you give children access to instruction of the highest quality, the test will take care of itself. So do me a favor. In your notes, tell me what a summary is. What is a summary? Write down what you believe a summary is on a piece of scratch paper in your notes. And I need you to do it because I want to show you a low-hanging fruit, or a set of low-hanging fruit that we can resolve tomorrow in service to children. And congratulations to those of you who got a copy of my latest book. I know 50 of you got a copy of it. Could you hold it up? And if you don't have a copy of it, one is going to be mailed to you. Okay? All right. Compliments of Dr. Molly Killingsworth and her team. Okay, so what is a summary? Y'all write something for me, please. Okay. Let me give you the definition for summary, okay? And I want you to rub it up against what you've written, okay? A summary is a brief statement that contains the essential ideas of a longer passage. It's a brief statement that contains the essential ideas of a longer passage. That's not my definition. Y'all, that's the psychometrician's definition, which means what? In our teachers' thinking and the folks who are supporting teachers in our programming, they have to have this definition in their thinking. What did you write on your paper? I'll tell you what you wrote. And this is not an indictment. This is an opportunity for growth. Whatever you wrote, let me tell you something. I could go here, 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 here. Guess what I would find? They're all different. What you have written is all different. And so children under our instructional care, they go from one classroom to the next classroom, from one grade to the next grade, and the teacher with good intention gives them a different expectation for what it means to summarize, just like what's written on your paper. That doesn't mean the teacher's a bad person. That means they had not calibrated in service to children. And so we don't want our children to become instructionally schizophrenic, do we? And what is instructional schizophrenia? They hear voices. And whose voices do they hear? They hear voices of people who cared about them, but people who are not calibrated in service to them. So then what do you need in your programming? A resource that has, I'm going to skip past this one and this one, a resource that has in it the definitions that cross grade levels and content areas that children need to take with them when they leave that course and go to the next course, or when they leave that grade and go to the next grade. Are y'all with me? Now, I'm not saying you have to get this, but you've got to get something. Because we're telling kids that an inference is an educated guess, and then when they get to the assessment, that doesn't help them. An inference is a logical assumption that's based upon information from the text, plus one's prior knowledge and experience. You know, can I lean over to any third grader in your district through 12th grade and ask them what is point of view? You know what they should say to me? Well, sir, it depends on what kind of text you're reading. If you're reading informational text, point of view is opinion. But if you're reading literary text, point of view is the position of the narrator. First person, second person, third person limited, third person omniscient. What's a conclusion? It's a sophisticated inference. An inference needs one piece or limited information, but a conclusion needs multiple pieces of information plus one's prior knowledge and experience. Do our children have deep conceptual understanding of academic language? Do the people who are serving them have it? Do the resources we put in front of them ensure it? Okay, I'll take my seat in a minute. And I've also done the same thing for literary concepts, because terms like characterization and onomatopoeia and assonance, children deserve to have one operational definition to those really important terms. Okay? All right. Let's keep going. Okay, so let me talk to you about 4 instructional practices that I believe, I know for a fact, help to improve student outcomes. Okay, and here's number 1. And number 1 is quite controversial. Okay, put on your seatbelt. Writing the state standard on the board has never helped a child. Never. And I remember being a 3rd grade teacher, and that principal scaring the bejesus out of me, telling me if I didn't have it on the board, I'd be in big trouble. And I put it on the board. And when I got observed, the kids would like band together and help me, right? They would say, sir, we're going to be good today. And we're going to read this thing together. And they would read it out loud together in unison. Guess what? And not understand a single word that was in it. So what's better than forcing this state standard on the board? I'm not saying don't teach to the expectation of the state standard. I'm saying writing an anthology of a standard on the board is no use to children. So then what's better than that? A learning target that is 1 part content and that is 1 part higher order thinking. 1 part content and 1 part higher order thinking. And it is available to everyone who walks into the classroom. Because as a former principal, and y'all, you know, I always inherited the lowest performing secondary school as a principal. And after 1 year, we either broke the record in the state or we broke the record in the district. And we didn't do test prep. We moved away from writing the standard and we said to kids, what are we going to teach you? And now what are you going to do with it? So they understood the purpose for their learning. And we made it a really prominent location, put in a really prominent location in the classroom so that anyone who walked in knew what we were up to. And it wasn't about the lesson plan because we punished teachers with lesson plans. So, you know, I want you, and I would turn in my lesson plan, and I would even turn it in on time, but it wasn't what I was doing. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Anarchy. Because I don't know, sometimes I didn't know what I was going to do until I was into it. So we got to move away from this whole thing like a daily lesson plan. We got to move toward what? Lesson progression, which means what? Pick up where you left off. Okay, I'm getting off track. I'm sorry. Okay. So I see 3 kinds of objectives on classroom boards in this country. The first kind is flawed, and it's nothing but an activity. Today we're going to do a KWL chart, malpractice. Today we're going to do worksheet number 7, malpractice. You might as well put the whole state standard on the board. Okay, the second kind, content-driven. It's good because it's connected to a state expectation, like to teach main idea in 3.5, to teach central idea in 6.12, right? To teach, classification of organisms in, elementary grades, right? But it doesn't say to children, what is it that you're going to do with your new content knowledge? So the Shangri-La, the Sistine Chapel of objectives, it is the performance-based objective because it says, I'm going to teach you this so you can do that. And when we make those connections for kids, they're going to be more engaged in the instruction because they know where we're going. Let me give you a couple of examples. We're going to start with ELA. Look at this one. Students will be able to, some people write, I can. I don't want to have that battle with you, okay? All right. And but what's the issue? What's the real issue here? What do you see in the objective first? Jigsaw. That is not content. That is an activity. Why is that on the board? So when kids go home and parents say, what'd you do? We did a jigsaw. I'm a genius. Instead, we should connect content to higher order thinking. Here's the content of ELA. We're going to teach kids to identify key details so they can turn around and do what? Determine the main idea of the text. Now, do you see any words in that objective that have to be taught to kids before that lesson goes too far? Call them out for me, please. Okay. Identify, start there. Don't make any assumptions. I hear you, key details. What else? Determine, what else? Yeah, and guess what? When we do it up front, we don't have to pay on the back end. You never build a house starting with the roof. You start with the foundation. Y'all, somebody tweet that. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, class, we're going to determine the central idea of the text. That's just content. I'm going to determine the central idea of the text according to the state of Alabama for a specific purpose so that I can turn around and summarize the text without including my personal opinions and judgments. Do you see any words in that objective that have to be taught to children before the lesson goes too far? I do. What are they? Determine. Central idea. Summarize. Distinct. Personal opinions. Judgments. Okay. Let's do it this way. Y'all ever watch the evening news and there's always a roving reporter in the community and that roving reporter has a microphone and they always walk right past the person that could represent the community well through speech? And they walk right up on the person that embarrasses us all. And what do those people typically not have? Okay, I heard y'all saying teeth. I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going to say that. They typically don't have words. They typically don't have words. Y'all said teeth. I wasn't going to say that. And so how do we make sure that our children are picking up words? It starts with the learning target. I believe that people who made us write the state standard on the board all those years ago as teachers, that they were trying to do something good, but it became something bad. And what should it have been? It should have been the springboard to give kids access to what? Words. Okay, I'll keep going. So let's go to a different content area so I don't run out of time here. Let's go to social studies. Okay, class, we're going to be identifying the achievements of key historical figures. Good, but that's just content. In order to do what? In order to analyze the impact of their life on the United States, on life in the United States, the impact of their achievements on life in the United States. Do you see the words that have to be taught to kids before that lesson goes too far? I see them. So if you're trying to help children, please encourage people not to allow children to skip over words in the learning target that are unfamiliar to them. That's all I'm saying here. Okay? So let's keep going. So let's go to science. Okay, class, we're going to be distinguishing between plant and animal cells. That's good content, but let's make it performance-based so that we can turn around and do what? Classify organisms. When we make the connection between the content and the higher order thinking, we give instruction purpose, which means it promotes what? Engagement. Okay, let's go to another content area. Let's go to mathematics. Okay, so I was in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I met this 6-year-old. After I did professional development in her building, I came back 4 weeks later to make sure that they had moved away from taking down the anthology of a state standard and moving toward putting up a learning target that's 1 part content and 1 part higher order thinking. And so I walked in and I said, sweetheart, what are you doing? And what you see on the screen at the bottom was on the board. It said students will be able to count by 1 to 10 in order to compose and decompose composite figures. So I leaned over and I said, what are you doing? And she looked at me and did not pause. She said, we're composing and decomposing composite figures. And she looked at me like, you didn't know that, dummy? And so I said, well, do me a favor, young lady. Can you tell me what compose means? And what she's, and I'm thinking maybe, they prepared her for me. But no, she was very confident. It had nothing to do with my visit. So I said, what does compose? She said, well, compose means to make. And when the teacher gives us a number between 1 and 10, we're supposed to grab that number of Lego blocks and compose a composite figure. So I said, well, let me ask you another question. I said, well, what is decompose, since you know everything? So I'd already taught them on pages 31, 32, and 33 in my book, there are 30 prefixes, 30 root words, and 30 suffixes that our children deserve to understand. And when they understand them, you close the gap between their ability, their current ability, and the ability we need them to have so they can be competitive in the world. So she said to me, DE in front of decompose means away. So when the teacher tells us to decompose a composite figure, she wants us to pull the Lego blocks away from each other so we can do another number. My knees buckled. But really, they should have that capacity. Do me a favor. This is unorthodox. But do me a favor. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Turn and talk to somebody next to you. What are you thinking about performance-based objectives and academic language since we started this conversation? Real quick debrief. Go for it. What are you thinking? Okay, so allow me to call you back in 3. Allow me to call you back in 2. Allow me to call you back in 1. Okay, thank you. Calling you back. So watch this. Hey there, it's good to see you. So we started out saying that if we want kids to do well academically, we've got to push in a small number of practices into our service to children. And what's the first thing we can push in to that instructional ecosystem that is reflective of an inverted pyramid? A learning target that's one part content that came from the state expectation, and that's one part higher order thinking consistent with the state expectation. Followed by what? An opportunity for kids to develop conceptual understanding of the language that lives inside of the objective or the learning target. So you know what we did once and for all? How long have we had these state standards? About 10 or 11 years now? How long are we going to keep unpacking the same standards? So you know what I've done, what we've done at Educational Epiphany? We took the state standards and said, okay, here's the standard. And here's a paragraph or two. Here's what it actually means. So that when we go into the PLCs, or we go to the planning table to prepare for our academic programming, everyone who's responsible for serving children, they're on the same page as it comes to what that standard means we're supposed to do for children. And then what are the learning targets? We wrote every single one of them. And what kind of teacher notes and reminders do we need to have so that folks can teach the true expectation, the true nuanced expectation of the standard? So we have to stop telling kids that main ideas in the first sentence, because sometimes it's not stated at all. And we have to make sure that kids understand that topic is too broad to be the main idea, and key details are too narrow to be the main idea. Are y'all with me? Those kinds of reminders will put people on the same page. Because I don't think that teachers drive to school or drive to after-school programming with this in their head. You know, I can't wait to get to that school so I can underserve kids. Nobody's thinking that. And so they're underserving them because they do not have the knowledge necessary to serve them better. So then what do we have to do? Give them access to resources and training that closes their gap so we can close the gap that the children have. Okay. And here's what we've also done. Every term that lives inside of the standards, we've operationally defined them to make sure that everyone has the same definition of these terms that live inside of a particular grade level and cross grade levels and disciplines, okay? We've also written the graphic organizers, written the questions that we need to ask children relative to the ELA standards, and we've also pulled the text so that folks don't have to go on Teachers Page, teachers.com to look for stuff to teach to the expectation. Okay, all right. Now, let's go to instructional practice number 2. Now, what is instructional practice number 2? It is teach kids words. But what kinds of words? Y'all, this is going to be powerful. What kind of words do kids need to know? They need to understand general words, which are words that cross grade levels and disciplines, and they need to understand domain-specific words that live inside of a particular content area. Like onomatopoeia is a domain-specific word for ELA. Like fraction is a domain or content-specific word for mathematics, so forth and so on, okay? So then how do we make sure, without adding something to the teachers' plates who are serving kids, whether it be in school or in after-school programming, how do we integrate a focus on academic language without adding something, okay? All right, here we go. There are 7 strategies for teaching kids words. Number 1, annotate the objective, which we have already talked about, which is what? Every word that's in the objective, make sure kids understand them. All right? And then there are 6 other strategies I'm going to talk to you about today. Y'all ready? Let's do it. Okay. Point of view's annotation of the objective. So let's say kids walk into your academic programming, and this is on the board as the learning target for a few days. So class, we're going to be citing strong and thorough textual evidence in order to support an analysis of what the text says explicitly and inferences drawn from the text. That means nothing to the average kid. Which is why we don't want to replace one act of compliance, writing the state standard, with another act of compliance, writing the objective on the board. Instead, we want to go from compliance to commitment. Right? Who cares? Compliance is important, but use compliance to be committed to serving children based upon their needs. Okay, so what would I do for children who are in my classroom and this is my learning target? You know what I would do? I would ask them, hey, class, do me a favor. Call out for me the words that are a mystery to you. Or maybe they're not a mystery to you, Greg. They might be a mystery to one of your classmates. I need you to call it out so that I can make sure everyone understands every one of these words. So, Greg, I'm going to start with you. Is there a word up there that could be a mystery to you and your 5th grade classmates? Evidence. Okay, good. Is there another one? Analysis. Is there another one? Inference. Is there another one? Explicitly. Is there another one? Thorough. The whole freaking thing. That is what our kids are up against, y'all. Okay, so then what am I going to do for children? I'm going to talk to them about every one of these terms. Thank you, class, for calling out those words that are a mystery to you. Now I'm going to be able to help you. Thanks for telling the truth. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to know. Knowledge is power. So let's talk about the first term. The first term is citation. Okay, fifth graders, have your parents ever gotten a ticket on their car? That's a citation. And well, let me tell you what's on that citation. Exactly where your parents parked their car, the location. So when I ask you to cite textual evidence, what am I asking you to do? Tell me the location of where the evidence is parked in the text. So when I say citation, what do you say? Location. Okay, let's move to the next word. Because people think, I don't have time to teach vocabulary. You're going to pay on the front end or you're going to pay on the back end. Okay, strong. Something that's strong is powerful. It does what it's supposed to do. It does not go forward and return void without having accomplished its purpose. It's powerful. And so when I ask you to cite strong textual evidence, I want the most powerful textual evidence you can find in response to my question. So when I say strong, what do you say, fifth graders? Powerful. Y'all stay with me. Okay, here's one. That word is not through, fifth graders. That word is thorough. Okay? And something that is thorough is done with great care and completeness. Sort of like my prom outfit in 1991. Y'all, I was thorough. My blue tie, my blue cummerbund, my blue socks. My girlfriend had a blue dress, and we had a blue rental car. We were complete. So when I ask you to cite thorough textual evidence, what I want you to do, completely answer the question. Do not ask me how many sentences I want you to write. Okay, let's keep going. Textual evidence, I see a suffix there, al at the end of textual. So textual means what? Al means what? Of. So what does textual mean? Of the text. And what does evidence mean? It's proof. So what is textual evidence? Proof that came of the or from the text. Don't make that complicated, fifth graders. Now, support. What does support mean? It means to hold up. Now, what's holding up the chair that you're seated in today? It's not just grace and mercy. That chair has legs. So when I ask you to hold up your response to my question, what am I asking you to do? Go back to the text. Tell me exactly where you found it. Give me the most powerful evidence you can find. Okay, let's keep going. What is that word? Explicitly. Analysis, excuse me. When you analyze something, you do not break it down. You actually break it apart. And when you break something apart and you put it back together, that's synthesis. Analysis and synthesis, they're the opposite of each other. So do me a favor. Hold out your left hand. We're going to analyze our left hands. Tell me the parts of it. Say it out loud for me, please. Fingers. How many fingers? Uh-oh. 4. And a thumb. That makes you human. Okay, keep going. Skin, all right, nails, yeah. Okay, good. Now, notice none of you said hand. Thank you. Because if you take off your ring, you still have a hand. Now, you might have less of a headache, but you're still going to have a hand. Okay, all right. Next one, explicit. EX in front of a word means what, y'all? It means out. Like exit means go out of it. So something that's explicitly stated is outwardly stated. And now the last word I need you to know is inference. We already talked about it. It's not an educated guess. It's actually a logical assumption. It's something you think is true, but you don't know if it's true. And it's based upon what you've experienced out there in the world and what you know. Okay, now watch this, y'all. Here's the most powerful part of what I've done. Watch what I put on the screen in red. Okay, class. We're going to be noting the location of powerful, complete words taken directly from the text to hold up the parts of what is stated and assumed. What just happened for children? Oh, I see you, friend. Yeah. What just happened for children? Light bulbs. And people will say, I don't have time for this, but this is what children need. If I go to the emergency room with a broken leg and you pull my 2 front teeth, I'm going to be upset. And children are coming to us with a broken leg and we're pulling their front teeth. So in a really prominent location in the classroom, we need to have this learning target that's filled with what? Power. What I mean this learning target is filled with power. It's filled with academic language to which they might be unfamiliar. So when I say cite, what do you think now? When I say strong, what should you be thinking as my students? Yeah, and so forth and so on. And not only will you remember it, your students will remember it as well. And this is our reasonable service to children. Y'all hear me? Let me repeat that. This is our reasonable service to children. Okay. This also applies to the other content areas, and so let me do this with the social studies objective. Same thing. Hey, kids, talk to me. Do you see any terms in that objective that are a mystery to you? Let's talk about each one of them. So I may talk about what it means to identify something, what achievements are, what it means for something to be important, and what makes an historical figure. What does analyze mean? Those words are going to keep coming up again and again. Notice you see analyze again here, because that's part of the universal language of literacy. It's going to keep coming up again and again and again. So then we say to kids, now, what are we going to be doing here? We're going to be recognizing and naming things done successfully by important people from the past so that we can pull apart the effect of their life on what makes the United States the United States. This is our reasonable service to children. Okay, so let me go here. What are we talking about? Instructional practice number 2, which is what? Teach kids words. How? By starting with the words in the learning target. Okay, what strikes you about the content on the screen now? What shocks you? I hear you, young lady. I'm shocked that some of these words should have been taught to children in kindergarten. Y'all see the word citation, number 6? Y'all, that's a kindergarten word. I think number 1 is analyze, yes? Or, argument. Number two, analyze. That's a kindergarten word. Which means what? Our instructional programming has to meet the expectation, because people say, well, no, these words are too complicated for kids. No, they aren't, because their slates are blank and we can fill them. I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and a group of educators told me kids could not handle the word key details, that the first graders couldn't handle it. So I said, well, bring me a group of kids. So they brought me a little rainbow coalition, one from every continent. They sat them in front of me. They sat them right in front of me, yeah. And so I said, hey, guys, I'm going to teach y'all a few things. And they were excited. They were like, are you the president? No. So I said, well, let's talk about what we know about key details. And one Latinx girl, she raised her hand, first grade, remember. And she said, well, I know what key details are. I said, tell me. And remember, there's somebody in the room that said they couldn't. So I said, well, tell me. She said, well, when I go home, I put the key in the door. You put the key in the door. Okay, so tell me more. She said, well, if the key unlocks the door, I think the key details unlock the main topic. And I looked right at the person that said they couldn't. Yes, they can. If we give them the opportunity and we're not in such a big hurry to get to the end of the curriculum guide. Because have you ever seen somebody speed up to a red light? You're not thinking, ooh, that's a genius. But then why do we ask teachers to speed up to the instructional red light? What's more important? Because America is getting to the end of its collective curriculum guide at the end of each school year, and 75% of all minority children can't read. So what's the worst that could happen if we slow down and have a conversation with children about academic language? I feel like y'all should clap on that one or something. So here's what I've done. I've taken all of the terms that cross grade levels and disciplines, and I created these digital cards that teachers can drop into their PowerPoints or they can display in their classrooms with the operational definition. And soon, I'm going to sit down in front of the camera, and I'm going to talk about what all of these words mean. Because if kids don't know these words, they will have been taught by us, but when they get assessed, it will appear that they have not been taught by us. Okay? And so I put these cards in different formats. They're digital, as you see on the screen, but then they're also a set of handheld cards. When I was a little kid, I had a set of index cards with a hole punched in the side. Y'all remember that? And the teacher said, when I run out of lesson and I still have more time, you pull those cards out of your desk. And we flashed those cards with each other, and I knew those words that I needed to know. Whatever happened to that, I'm bringing it back. Thank you. Now, I've also taken those same cards and I created the poster of all 36 for your word walls, and I've also created individual posters of these really important terms. 11 by 17. So that, like you see a number line above a chalkboard or the alphabet above a chalkboard, I think children deserve to have unfettered access to the operational definitions of these really important terms. Okay? All right. So in addition to that, I've also created a set of anchor charts with my caricature on them. Okay? All right. And these, so if you ever go into a classroom and you look at anchor charts, when you examine the anchor charts, you can see where teachers misunderstand something. And y'all, I'm not indicting teachers because I'm a teacher. But let me tell you this, one cannot transfer what one does not possess. And if I have, in some way, a discrepant understanding of a really important literacy concepts, they belong to every teacher in every grade, in every discipline. And if I have a discrepant understanding of what text features are, or what text structures are, or what author's purpose means, I'm going to pass that on to my students. And so these anchor charts are designed to clear up the misunderstandings that adults have about these really important concepts, okay? I'm very excited about this resource. All right. Do your word walls look like this, or do your word walls look like that? Because if your word walls look like that and they don't look like that, all you have up is decorations. What am I saying here? People race to their classrooms in the summer, to begin the fall semester, to put up word walls that don't help children. That this helps children. The second one, not the first one. Okay? Now, let me say this to you. We're going to do a quick activity. There are 30 prefixes, as I talked to you about the child in Lake Charles. There are 30 root words. There are 30 suffixes that make up 97% of the words that kids are going to see and not know once they get past second grade. Remember, what's the formula for reading at the grade level expectation? Decoding plus creating meaning. This is the creating meaning conversation. If I can't create meaning of the words that I see, but then you want me to summarize that text and I didn't understand the text? You want me to analyze the author's use of allegory and I didn't understand the text? Okay, so notice the color coding here. Green, beginning of the word, beginning of the traffic signal, right? Yellow, traffic signal, think traffic signal. Red, think traffic signal. Suffix, always at the end of the word. Okay, so I'm going to put up some prefixes, root words, and suffixes, and I want you as conscientious educators to tell me the answer of the meaning of that word part. And if one person in the room gets it correct, I'm going to give it to the whole room. Okay, all right, here we go. Tell me, what does that mean? Why am I doing this with you? I'm not testing you. If children cannot make sense of word parts with automaticity, they will not read on grade level. They will call out words on grade level. Okay. Y'all be proud. Say it. Yeah, self. I heard you. Yeah, chili con queso, right? Yeah, against. We talked about this one already. What'd you do with your ex? Okay, all right. What does that mean in front of a word? Yeah, not. And what did you do to come up with not? You generated a bunch of words, and then you stepped back from them, and you saw what they all had in common. But what if you're a child that can't generate a list of words? You're in big trouble. International, between nations. People think that vocabulary development is using a word in a sentence. It's not. It's not even the word a day on the PA system. Nobody's listening. Vocabulary development is what? Word part development. When you multiply, look, a child who reads below grade level has 2,500 words in their lexicon. But a child who reads on or above has 25,000 in their lexicon. You do not blow up a child's vocabulary through a single word of the day. You do it through word parts. So wherever they see the word part, they can create meaning. Y'all Methodists, y'all quiet. Above. Across. Okay, let's go to root words. To hear. Good. Benediction. It's the process of saying something good. It's not order. It's time. Chronological. Chronos and chronological means time. And LOG and chronological means order. ICAL in chronological means related to, related to. So what does chronologically literally mean? Related to thought, related to order using time, or related to thought or order using time. Whereas sequential is in order without time. Y'all, this is a tough one. Yeah, speak. You dictate a letter, you speak it, you say it. You're conductor of the symphony. Fiduciary, infidel, manual labor, empathy, sympathy, apathy, antipathy, telepathy. Are y'all with me? You want to multiply kids' vocabulary, multiply their understanding of word parts. Empathy, feelings as if you came out of their shoes. That E means out. Antipathy, feelings against. Apathy, no feelings. Telepathy, to send feelings from far away. Philadelphia, philanthropic, philosophy. Telephone, telegraph, telescope, telegram, writing from far off. Telescope, seeing from far off. Telegram, writing, seeing. Telescope, telephone, that's the other one I was looking for in my head. To hear from far off. Okay, the road less traveled are the suffixes of or related to. Become, initiate, become an initiate. Professor, teacher, one who. But it also means comparative, stronger, faster, longer. Become, princess, duchess, female. Do our kids know this? Do the adults serving them understand this? Somebody said, hell, I don't understand it. Present participle, jumping, running, have it, okay? SHIP, y'all, this is difficult for children, but it means position held. You know, internship, what position do you hold? Leadership, what position do you hold? Relationship, what position do you hope you're holding? Okay? So let me do this. Here's what our kids need from us. Remember I talked about closing the gap between their instructional and their independent reading level? How are you supporting this in your programming and in your purchasing? Are we saying to kids, tell me, do you see any words in this text you don't understand? Guess what they're made up of? Guess what these words are made up of? Y'all see that color coding? They're made up of what? Word parts. So that, do you see this in your programming? That someone is taking time with kids to say, I'm not going to let you read a single paragraph, sentence that you don't understand. And I want you to write in the margin, and then we're going to read the text. And I want you to replace what you did not understand with the notes that we took on the words you did not understand. You're going to close that gap. So what do they need while they're reading? I mean, as a principal, I glued this to the desk of my middle school students. And I said to them, you should never be dependent upon someone else to create meaning for you. You should be able to do it inside of your own head. So it doesn't matter what they're reading, whether it's an elementary text or an upper elementary text or even a secondary text. So you know what I did? I created a literacy kit. And y'all, I did this with index cards when I was a principal, and now I have a manufacturer. And so what is in this kit? All of those green, yellow, and blue cards that kids need. They need them out of context of reading, but also in the context of reading. So you know what I would do? I'll create student-directed centers where they go to the centers with each other and they flash those word parts so that when they end up in a reading situation or an assessment situation, they can make sense of what they are encountering as a reader. Okay, here's that formula that I think is really important for our conversation today. If you want kids to read at the grade level expectation, you got to go through decoding and creating meaning. Okay, now let me say this. Y'all, I have 25 more minutes remaining. Y'all okay with that? Okay. There's a set of words that our kids need to know if we want them to be successful. And what are these words called? They're called sight words. And y'all are thinking, okay, here we go. Why am I talking about sight words? Y'all, this is really important. Y'all hear me on this. In the early elementary grades, 80% of the words that kids are going to see come from a single list of words, which makes these words really important. And people say, well, Doc, these words are embedded in our program. They're buried in our programming. We have to bring them to the surface for the sake of children. Okay, 220 of those 315 words are what are called service words. You know, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, conjunctions. And 95 of those 315 words are called high-frequency nouns, okay? And here they are for pre-K. Which means what? The pre-K children under your instructional care, they have to know these like they know their name, because they make up 80% of the words that they're going to see when they're trying to learn how to read. Here they are for kinder. Here they are for first, second. Here they are for third. And here are the high-frequency nouns. And 15 of these have to be pushed down in the third, and 15 pushed down in the second. 15 of those high-frequency nouns pushed down in the first, right? 15 of them pushed down in each one of these grades. Why? Because you have to get to 315 over the course of their pre-K to 3 experience, which means what? There are 63 of these words that kids have to learn each year. 63. Which means what? Who checked when your children came into the building in kindergarten that they held on to the pre-Ks? And when they started third grade this year, who checked that they held on to the seconds and the first and the pre-K? And who checked? Because the machine can't check this for you. iRated can't check this for you. Dibbles can't check this for you. And a human has to check it. Are y'all with me? And I'm not bashing programs and technology, because technology is supposed to be an accelerator of improvements in student outcomes. But there is no substitute for an adult sitting in front of the kid and saying, now read off of this list to me. You're welcome. And then there's another set that kids need to know. In the upper third grade, all the way through ninth grade, you seldom hear a conversation in this country about sight words in 5th grade and 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade and 9th grade. But watch those kids write. They don't know the difference between their T-H-E-R-E and their T-H-E-I-R. So here they are. That's the first 100. Here's the second 100, all the way up to the 10th 100. What are we, if we say we don't want our children to read below the grade level expectation, and no one at the upper elementary, middle school, and high school level is making sure that kids understand those 1,000 fry words, malpractice. If we say they can't read, but we don't give them the words that they are going to see when they are learning to read or reading to learn how to do something, we're a tingling cymbal. So what did I do? I created a resource that doesn't feel like it's babyfied for upper elementary, middle school, and the 9th graders who do not know these sight words, so that they're color-coded, so that kids can go in centers, or kids can work with, the teacher to make sure they understand these words. I was reading with a kid in Georgia, and he knew 3 out of the 30. I was reading with a kid in Arkansas, and he said, Dr. Dickey, I will read for you, but I'll tell you right now, I see words on the page, and I don't know what to say. But he's a star of the basketball team, and they're using him for that. So what is the instructional practice? Teach kids words. So do me a favor. You all turn and talk. I'm going to give you 1 minute on the clock. What are you thinking? Hey, Catherine. 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 Hey, Catherine. Can you get a picture? All right. Allow me to call you back in 3. Allow me to call you back in 2. Okay. Allow me to call you back. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. You guys are going to have to invite me back again, okay? So, because I'm going to run out of time and I have a whole lot more I want to do with you, but let me continue. I hope you didn't indict yourself here. I hope that you said there's an opportunity for growth. Yes? Yes. So I want you to think about your programming. I want you to think about your professional development plan for people who are teaching in your programs. One cannot transfer what one does not possess. Okay, let's keep going. Let me go to instructional practice number 3, okay? Instructional practice number 3 is what I like to call the gradual release of responsibility. Gradual release of responsibility. Okay, let me ask you this question. How did you learn how to tie your shoes? It was a gradual release. Somebody, showed you, they did it with you, they watched you do it, now you can do it on your own. Some people say, well, I just wear Velcro. Okay, that's your decision. Okay. Okay. Let me ask you another question. How did you learn how to ride a bicycle? It was the gradual release of responsibility. Somebody showed you, they held your seat, they put on training wheels. Are y'all with me? You fell a couple of times, maybe you had a helmet, okay? Your parents didn't just push you out into traffic on a tricycle. Okay, y'all don't like that question? Let me ask you this final one. How did you learn how to use profanity? It was you heard it at the bus stop. And you tried it. And now you're good at it. Okay, what point am I trying to make, y'all? The things that we have learned really well, we have learned through the gradual release of responsibility. So why is our teacher not equally reflected of this method for delivering instruction? Okay, so what is gradual release? It applies to all content areas but science. You don't want to teach science using gradual release because science is supposed to be inquiry-based. You ruin science when you use gradual release, for kids, that is. So instead, science, I believe, should be taught through 5 phases. Engage the kids, like hook them, right? And then let them explore the scientific concept. And then explain the scientific concept to them through lecture or through a reading opportunity. And then elaborate, which means what? Let them do a lab. And then evaluate their understanding. But everybody else outside of science really should be thinking about the gradual release when they're planning their instruction. Okay, watch this. So you see those learning targets, objectives at the top of the screen. Pick the one that makes the most sense to you in service to children. And I want to talk to you about, I want to link it to the gradual release of responsibility. Before you do anything with children, I think we have to teach the words that are in the learning target, right? So what is the first phase of gradual release of responsibility? How should children be taught how to ride a bike, how to tie their shoes? First, we have to model for them, do it for them, right? And let them watch. And then I put this in red on purpose because this is really misunderstood in our country. Because the we do is supposed to be an opportunity to assess children, to do a quick check. But people are continuing to model in the we do. So watch this. Okay, class, we're going to be identifying key details to determine the main idea of the text, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the I do. But when we get to the we do, I'm not going to call one person to the front of the room and have them show everybody else, because that's not a we do. Whoever I'm calling to the front of the classroom, they're the only child that's getting a chance to do the do. So a we do should be like this. Okay, everybody, I just modeled for you how to determine the main idea. Now, here's what I want you to do. We're going to go to a different text. We're going to make sure we understand the words that are in it. We're going to make sure we can pronounce the words that are in it. Now, in the we do, I want everybody pick up your pen. Fake it for me, please. Everybody, pick up your pen. Tell me what you think is the main idea. Go. Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Yep. That's not what I want, Greg. I'm coming back. Don't you give up. Good job. Good job. Good job. What did I just do? Who just did the do? Everyone did the do. Are y'all with me? But folks are calling on one kid in the we do. And then they're surprised when kids can't do the do, because they didn't get a chance to do the do until they were asked to do the do alone. Are y'all with me? And so what else is important after the we do? After the we do, we have to turn the kid, tell kids turn to one another. Now I'm going to give you another text, and you guys are going to do the very same thing, and I'm going to look over your shoulder as in partnerships. Okay, good job, partnership number 1. Number 2, number 3, good job. Y'all keep going. Okay, y'all keep going. Okay, the 2 of you, y'all come here. Let me help you real quick. Don't laugh at them, because this could be you. Come on over here. Let me help y'all. Okay, now y'all go back. And then I use the data to say, now we're ready to work alone. And who's not ready to work alone, they're going to come into another small group with me while everybody else is working alone, so the children don't get left behind. So what is the purpose of the I do? I'm going to show you what I want you to do alone, eventually by yourself. And then the we do, I'm going to see if my I do helped you. But if I only call on one student, I'm not collecting data that's going to help me to know if it's time for kids to work in pairs. And when kids are working in pairs and I'm sitting at my desk, I don't have enough information to know if they're ready to work alone. Are y'all with me? Check your we do's in your programming. Check to make sure kids are getting an opportunity to work in pairs. Because if they aren't getting an opportunity to cross-pollinate. Because another 12-year-old can teach another 12-year-old better than we can. When they get it, they can transfer it. Y'all have, you ever meet a pair of twins? They can speak without speaking to each other. And the same is true with children academically. I taught a model lesson the other day in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And the cute little 8th grade kids, a boy and a girl, were working together in a pairing that I put them in. And he let it out. He let it out loud. He said, "Partner, help me." Because he didn't understand. And she explained it. I stood back, because that's the purpose of them working in pairs. And she explained it to him. And then by the time we got to the you do without assistance portion of that lesson, he had it. Okay? All right. So, and by the way, can all 4 of these phases happen in one 45-minute period? Probably not. And when I was a high school English teacher, my assistant principal who was observing me, we're friends now, he said, if you don't get through all 4 of those phases of graduate release in this 45-minute lesson, you won't be rated satisfactory. So here's what I said in my head. You don't make sense. I said that inside of my head. I didn't say it out loud. Because the time should not tell me when I go to the next phase. The children's performance and understanding should guide my, okay. All right, so there's some behaviors that we have to demonstrate during each of these phases, and we have to hold ourselves accountable to the behaviors in the teacher column, and we have to hold children accountable to the behaviors in the students column. Y'all see that? And if I'm trying to get ready for the graduate release of responsibility and I'm teaching ELA, do you know what I need to do in advance at the planning table? I need to read the text. I need to try to complete the graphic organizer before I put it in front of children so that I can experience where they might experience difficulty. If I'm trying to get ready for graduate release of responsibility and I'm teaching social studies, you know what I need to read and examine before I stand in front of other people's children? The primary and secondary sources. And if I'm teaching mathematics, you know what I need to do to get ready for the graduate release of responsibility? I need to pre-work the practice problem so I can see where they might have an issue. And I need to pre-use the manipulatives so that I can make sure that I'm ready to model how to use the manipulatives to help them to understand fractions. Because some kids are never going to get math if we don't give them something concrete to touch. And it is malpractice to have kids performing below the grade level expectation in math and they don't have a manipulative. It's wrong. So some kids will never understand fractions if you don't give them fraction tiles. Some kids are never going to understand telling time on an analog clock if you don't give them a Judy clock. Y'all know the yellow and red clock. It's called Judy clock. Did y'all know that? Okay. All right. And so as it comes to ELA, teachers need the right graphic organizer so that kids can do what? Chunk their thinking. And here's what I did for the state of Alabama. I took every standard and I started with a blank screen. And I've given you everything you need to teach to the expectation of the standard. And some people will tell you, I have resources that are aligned to the standards for Alabama. That word aligned is code for something. They are a lion. Okay. So let's do the fourth and final practice. Fourth and final practice before I run out of time here. I got 12 minutes. Practice number 1 is what? Objectives. Learning targets written a certain way coming from the state standard. Okay? Number 2, teach kids words. And there are 7 strategies we talked about for teaching kids words. What's number 3? Gradual release of responsibility unless you're teaching science. Okay? Okay, number 4. Give kids an opportunity to write. But give kids an opportunity to write these ways: to inform, to explain, to express an opinion, to construct an argument. Why is this important? Reading is breathing in, and writing is breathing out. Y'all, that's heavy. And if children didn't get the appropriate opportunity to breathe in because they didn't understand the words in the text, but then you want them to write about what they read and they couldn't decode and create meaning, unfair. So children should be taught to write these 4 ways based upon the grade bands that you see on the screen, okay? Now, this is called what? Writing from sources, which means what? They're supposed to read multiple pieces of informational text and then write to give someone information about something. Read multiple pieces of text that explain something and write to explain the process. Read multiple pieces of text with somebody's opinion on something and express their opinion on that same something. Read multiple pieces of text that are argumentative in nature and argue for or against what the writers of the text argue for or against. Y'all with me? But that's not enough. Children also have to be able to do what? Before they put pen to paper, they have to make a decision on how they're going to structure their writing. Y'all know children write in a circuitous fashion. You know their writing goes off of the train tracks. And part of that reason is because they do not understand text structures. Okay, let's do this. Number 1, the first way that informational text can and should be organized is descriptively. It just describes a single person, a single place, a single thing, or a single idea. That's how it's structured by the author. And you don't need to read 400 pages to understand descriptive text structure. Dr. Molly Killingsworth is a very nice and welcoming person. What I just do, I described her. That one sentence, I can teach them descriptive writing. Right? The sky is blue. Y'all, that's a descriptive sentence. Okay, now, the second type of way that informational text is organized is compare and contrast. And I don't mean Venn diagram, because that's overused. What am I saying here? The way a text is structured, it compares 2 or more persons, places, things, or ideas, right? And so, so when we're teaching descriptive and compare and contrast, we should teach them up against each other. Why? They're the same with one exception. One is about a single person, place, thing, or idea, but the other one is about multiple persons, places, things, or ideas. Now, we're good in this country with giving kids a piece of text and asking them to tell us how it's structured, but do we require kids to write their own text and decide how it's going to be structured? Because the top of the pyramid of cognitive demand is creation. If you understand it, then you can create something using your understanding of it. Okay, here we go. The third and the fourth type of text structure, as it comes to organizing informational texts that are informative, explanatory, opinion, and argumentative, is what? Chronological and sequential. They both deal with order, but one uses time and one doesn't. So when our children write, do they connect the type of writing they're doing to the structure that they're going to use to compose their writing? And then the final 2, they're just the same with one exception, cause and effect and problem solution. They're both cause and effect. But problem solution offers a solution to the effect. Cause and effect, A cause B. That's how the text is structured. Problem solution, A cause B, you need a C. Are y'all with me? So do our children know that descriptive and compare and contrast are the same with one exception, chronological and sequential are the same with one exception, and cause and effect and problem solution are the same with one exception? So when we ask them to write, okay, class, we're going to be reading 2 pieces of text on frogs, and you're going to be giving someone information about frogs who've never seen a frog in person. And by the way, kids, how will your writing be structured? So what kind of text are we asking them to write here? Informative. And how should they be structuring it? Descriptively, because what are they doing? They're describing a single thing. Okay, here's another writing prompt. I'm asking you to examine your writing prompts in your programming. Okay, we're going to read 2 texts on the water cycle, and we're going to explain the water cycle to someone who might be unfamiliar with it. What kind of text are we asking kids to write here? Explanatory. And how should they structure their writing on the water cycle? Which one of these? Which one of these? I wouldn't use chronological because I wouldn't use time. What would I use? First, next, then last. And our kids will think chronological. They should be thinking sequential. Are y'all with me? Nothing wrong with a bad answer. There's something wrong with not trying. Okay, let's do a couple of more and I'll take my seat. Okay, class, you're going to read multiple credible sources on how a bill becomes a law, and then you're going to give someone insight to how a bill becomes a law. What kind of writing are they doing? The process for a bill becoming a law. Now, how should they structure their writing? Sequential, I heard it. Is this how we're teaching kids to write? That's why their writing is what it is. Whose responsibility is this? Because a whole lot of people think this is just the ELA teacher's responsibility. This is everybody's responsibility. Okay, class, you're going to be writing about the contributing factors and the aftermath of the Civil War. What kind of text are they writing? Informative, and how should it be structured? They could choose more than one, because sometimes the text has more than one structure inside of it. Okay, last one. Y'all will like this one. It's popular. Read multiple editorials on wearing a mask to prevent the spread of COVID-19. How are you going to structure your writing? What kind of writing are they doing here? Okay, it's opinion if they're elementary, but it's argumentative if they're secondary. And how should they structure it? It could be any of those. But guess what? As long as it makes sense to the person who's writing the text,